Today I want to talk about the key differences between feeling anxious and anxiety. And hopefully by the end of today, you will have a better understanding of the difference between the two that will help you regain control and get clarity over a situation that may currently be crippling you. I'm your host, Daniel James, a mindset and high performance coach and author of The Identity Wheel. And if you're new here, welcome. So this whole conversation comes off the back of a long, detailed chat that I had with one of my clients recently. And he is struggling with anxiety. And one of the biggest things that was crippling him is not understanding what anxiety actually was. And because he couldn't understand it, he couldn't understand where it was coming from, what he was doing was mixing the feeling of feeling anxious and anxiety and interchanging the two. And I feel like a lot of people get caught in that same trap. They interchange the natural, normal feeling of anxious with anxiety, and they get themselves into a mental prison that they then struggle to get out of. So what's the difference between the two? Well, first of all, it's recognizing, and again, I've got some definitions here. Being anxious is temporary. It's a normal emotional response to a specific stressor. So that could be exams, it could be an interview. While anxiety is a disorder which involves chronic, excessive fear and worry that persists for months, often without a specific trigger, significantly impacting daily life. So we can see here that there's a very clear distinction. Now, this temporary normal emotion of feeling anxious is designed to keep us safe. About 2 years ago, I was traveling around Canada. Beautiful, beautiful country, and we were in the Rocky Mountains. So it was me, my girlfriend, and her little lad, who at the time must have been maybe 4 or 5 years old. It's the middle of winter, covered in snow, and we decided to walk around this lake in this sort of wooded land. And all around, there were signs about bears. Watch out for bears. Make sure in the summer you've got your bear spray and all this stuff. I thought, okay, great. The bear's going to be hibernating. I'm not worried. I'm not stressed. Now, as we kind of got an hour into this walk and got a little bit lost, I started to get anxious. I started to feel my heart beating very fast. I became very aware of how fast my heart was beating. Not only that, I was very aware. I was constantly looking around because suddenly I started convincing myself, well, what if the bears actually aren't hibernating? What if the bears can smell us? So I'm telling myself this story in my head, and I'm now convinced that we're going to run into a bear, and I've already made the decision that if a bear comes out, I'm going to have to risk my life and pray that those two get away. So I've got this story made up in my head. And my girlfriend says to me, are we okay? I'm like, yeah. And how many times have you had that in your life where you've got this feeling of feeling anxious, but you have to put on a brave face for those around you? Maybe it's your team at work. Maybe it's an organizer of an event that you're speaking at, or maybe it's even with your own family, where actually you've kind of got to put on this brave face because something's not quite right, but you don't want your kids to know that. That's the situation I was in. And then suddenly, I hear a crack of a twig. And you know when you have it where you're in bed and you hear a noise at night time, and you know you've heard a noise. You may think it's a burglar, but you've convinced yourself that you're just going to stay in bed and pretend you didn't hear that noise that you definitely did just hear. That's kind of what I did. And then I suddenly slowly looked over my left shoulder, and there are a pair of eyes about 100 yards away staring at me. And to say for that 1 second that I feared for my life is an understatement. Because again, the narrative I just told myself. It's only when I kind of got a bit more perspective that I realized it was a deer. And then suddenly all this anxious energy and these nervous thoughts I've been thinking and all this fear-based thinking just dissipated. Because I realized if there's deers wandering around, there's not going to be bears anywhere near. So everything was fine and everything was calm. But notice that is a completely natural and normal response to that situation. Feeling anxious is not bad. It is a response. It is your body trying to tell you something, that you need to be alert, you need to be aware, or that something doesn't feel right. And all too often, when we feel this, we convince ourselves we're struggling with anxiety. But notice what I said earlier on. There's a key difference between feeling anxious and anxiety. Feeling anxious is very chronic. It kind of comes and it goes. It's very situational. Whereas feeling anxious can last for, again, weeks, months, again, if you're really sure, years. So very clear differentiation between the two. And the intensity, again, being anxious, it's mild. It's mild. And in my situation there, it can get a bit extreme, but it's short-lived. It's very situational. It's there and I can feel it ramping up. And I'm noticing actually that I'm kind of doing this to myself. I'm creating a story, I'm creating a narrative, and I'm ramping it up. But once again, being anxious is usually linked to a specific event. Me walking through the woods, knowing there's bears around. Where this anxiety is a disorder where we have no immediate obvious cause. So can we see here that there's two very clear things here. Now, I just want to go to whiteboard a bit as well to basically help give you a bit more clarity on this and kind of how this happens, especially when it comes to feeling anxious. So we've got you right now in the present moment. And then we've got you in the future. And then we've got you in the past. Now, with this, the past is normally associated with depression. So when our mind goes from the present moment into the past and we start to ruminate, keyword here is ruminate, meaning we keep thinking those same thoughts and we're getting ourselves into a negative spiral, that's then when depression becomes present. Now, if we flip that and we start to worry about the future, this is then when anxiety comes into play. Now, again, the anxious feeling comes from a future that we don't know. Again, am I going to get eaten by a bear? But ultimately, when we keep living in this future-based state, based on things that we know nothing about, that's then when it becomes chronic. Because what's happening is when we worry about one thing, those negative, anxious thoughts, when it goes unchecked, feeds more negative, anxious thoughts. And we start to create stories about everything and anything. And it ultimately comes down to the feeling of not feeling safe. Feeling anxious, having anxiety is all about not feeling safe. And it's all to do with future-based thinking. It's all about the what ifs. And if you actually notice and catch yourself in this situation, you will see that you are doing that to yourself. You are creating these stories and these situations. And it is then generating a feeling within the body that is undesirable. And then the actions that follow are either we kind of avoid a situation or we kind of do it, but we're not really there. We're not present. And that's what I want to get through to you today, is that we cannot have that feeling of anxiousness and anxiety if we ground ourselves in the present moment. Because in the present moment, there is nothing to worry about. So let's link it back to me when I was walking through that wooded area. In the moment, I was safe. There was nothing to indicate until I saw the eyes, by the way, there was nothing to indicate that I was in any sort of danger. It's only when I started to move out of the present moment and wonder about the what ifs that my mind got away with me. So what can we do to ground ourselves in the present moment? Because that's ultimately what we want to do here. And if you start to notice that you're going down a rabbit hole where an anxious thought is kind of getting out of control, here's what we can do. The first thing is take a big deep breath. And when you're taking the big deep breath, you are focusing on the sensation of the air going into your nose and the sensation of the air going out of your mouth. So we're going in, and I'm noticing that sensation, and I breathe out, and I'm noting the sensation around my lips. Let me do it one more time. Now from here, look around the room, or if you're outside, look around you and identify 5 colours that you can see. So right now, we look around, I've got yellow, I've got purple, I've got green, I've got black, I've got white. And then wiggle your toes. Keep wiggling, keep wiggling. And another big deep breath. Now just notice how present you feel. Having these little things that keep you grounded and present in the moment will help stop you from allowing those thoughts to run away with you. Now, some of you that have ever worked with me may or may not know this, but I always do these podcasts with a label. I always play with a label. Why? Because it grounds me. It keeps me present in this moment while I'm talking to you and stops my mind from wandering. When I'm driving, I do the same thing. Also, when I'm stepping on stage with my clicker, I'm not sat there messing around the clicker. It's a very small button I've got, and I just feel it in my hands. I feel it in my fingers, because when I'm feeling the clicker, it's grounding me in the present moment. So I just want you to understand that if you are feeling anxious, that is a natural, normal response to a situation. So it's asking yourself, where and why has this situation come about? What am I nervous about? What am I anxious about? And is this valid? Or am I just creating a story? What are the stories I'm telling myself, and what are the facts? And then if we are struggling with that chronic anxiety, then make sure we're reaching out and getting support. But also realize that the more we can ground ourselves in the present moment, either through breathing, breathwork is fantastic, or through meditation, or just through the simple observations of what's around us, what can I see, what can I hear, and wiggling our toes, all of these things build up and allow you to get back control and back into the present moment. If you've taken value from today's episode, or you think that you know somebody that could take value from it, please don't forget to like it. If you're listening to this on podcast, don't forget to give us a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm, and it helps to get that message out there to help as many people as possible. Until next time, take it easy.